Okay, so a few logistics we wanted to go over for this webinar. A reminder that it will be recorded. We just started recording, and then it will also be published on FSA's new YouTube channel. And we will be sending that link out within the seven days of finishing the webinar, as well as including a handout and a copy of the slides that will be presented today. And then you are welcome to submit your text questions and comments using the Q&A feature, and I'll be monitoring that throughout the webinar. Sabrina?
Perfect. Thank you, Jenna. All right. My name's Sabrina Renteria. I'm with FSA Advisory Group, a member of the Bishop Paiute Tribe out of California. And we are so excited to present this topic to you today. Currently, my role at FSA Advisory Group is a relationship manager with the Tribal Administrative Services team. I'm so excited to be here, and we'll go ahead and get started. So what's our goals today? What are we going to learn? So a few things, general grant knowledge. What are grants? What's a grant life cycle? We will touch on Grants.gov. We'll have an overview of that and some of the newer features that are available to us within that website. We'll talk a lot about eligibility. Also, of course, what is the notice of funding opportunity and what are the key parts to it? How and when should we apply for funding? Essential grant application formatting requirements. We'll talk a lot about that. How our application will be quote unquote graded. Key reporting elements of the potential award, and then how do we contact our funders or our potential funders? So some key items there that we'll be going through today. First things first, what is a grant? So a grant is a way that the government funds your ideas and projects and really to provide public services and stimulate our economy. Grants support critical recovery initiatives, innovative research, and many other programs that are listed in our catalog of federal assistance, so our CFDAs. A grant's one of many forms of federal financial assistance, and we utilize this term federal financial assistance as a broad term and really just to refer to various ways that the U.S. government redistributes resources to its eligible recipients. So for purposes of our clients here, eligible recipients would be tribal governments or tribal organizations. The grant life cycle you'll see here is everything pre-award. So we have an idea, we want to review an opportunity to obtain some money, we prepare a grant application, the agency reviews those applications, and hopefully we get awarded. So our main focus today is on this pre-award cycle here. Once somebody does get awarded, it goes through this cycle to getting the award, managing the award, monitoring it, closing it out, and then of course finally getting audited. But again, for today's purposes, we're just going to be focusing on the pre-award process, and particularly the notice of funding opportunity. So there are 26 federal grant awarding agencies, a lot to keep up with. We'll talk a lot about Grants.gov, how we best utilize that. But quickly, Congress and the president really determine national grant funding priorities. So Congress enacts original authorizing legislation for financial assistance programs. Then the money to fund those assistance programs comes from those annual appropriations acts, which arise within the federal budget cycle. The Department of Treasury administers those appropriation accounts, and once everything gets approved, the Office of Management and Budget, so OMB, where we get our OMB guidance from, then appropriates those funds to each of these federal agencies, again, 26 of them. The federal agency then allocates those funds to components of the agency, so within it itself, for spending both not only on operations, but also on the awards that they're going to be giving out for those financial assistance. So quite a few opportunities here, and I would like to say a lot to keep up with. All right, federal awarding agency provides these awards to non-federal entities. So for our instances here, tribes are considered non-federal entities, and that's how we are eligible to receive federal funding. You'll see a relationship map here on how funds get trickled down. So you have your federal funds there at the top. We have all sorts of federal financial assistance opportunities. For us today, we're going to be focusing on the far left, which are the grants. And we'll talk a little bit about formula grants, block grants, discretionary grants, and fixed award grants, and how the notice of funding opportunity plays a role in being able to obtain some of these grants. So first things first, types of grant awards. Formula grant, these are formulas based on statutes or regulations. So quick example here is we have a tribal transit formula grant. Tribes are able to apply to this grant, obtain funds for transit programs, and it's based on a formula, usually population, or maybe it's based on a need. So this is where the amount of money that you get from a grant is based on a formula. We've seen that recently, of course, with the COVID funds, CARES Act, your ARPA funds, your LATCF. The amount of money that was received was based on a type of formula. Another type of grant is a block grant. These are predetermined eligibilities, but also allows you to hone in on the functions that you want to provide with the funds. So for instance, the Indian Community Development Block Grant, we know it as ICDBG. This is a block grant that's available for tribes, but again, it's predetermined eligibility. The funding agencies will let you know if you are eligible to apply based on your status. We also have discretionary grants, and this is where most of our notice of funding opportunities derive from, because these are competitive grants based on merits of proposal, and we'll talk more about merits of a proposal here soon. Eligibility is based on enabling legislation. So whatever legislation that came down from the federal government that said, here's some money available to spend on these types of governments. If tribal governments and tribal organizations are listed in there as being eligible, it will come and derive again from that legislation. Discretionary grants can be non-competitive. Just to highlight that, and an example of, and this is a competitive one, are the CTAS grants, so the Coordinated Tribal Assistance Grants. So I'm not sure those on the webinar are familiar with this one, but just as an example, very competitive process based on merits. And we'll go through an example today of another competitive grant. We also have fixed amount awards. So this is where it could be a grant or a cooperative agreement. This requires written approval from the awarding agency, and it makes sure that the specific requirements of the award must be met. And same thing for cooperative agreements. This is more of an agreement between the federal agency and, again, for instance here with the tribe, maybe we're partnering. The federal agency is really heavy on providing technical direction to us, and they're doing the reporting on our behalf, or maybe they're giving more detailed programmatic guidance on accomplishing goals and objectives. Sometimes cooperative agreements also provide those subject matter experts for us. So there are other types of federal assistance programs. But these are just the types of grant awards and cooperative agreements that we would see with a notice of funding opportunity. All right, we'll jump into Grants.gov. And really wanted to highlight what the federal government uses this service for. So a lot of upgrades, and we'll kind of go through some of those newer features. One of the things that I really like about Grants.gov is that it's not just an information hub on where to find grants that are available to us, but provide us some with extra learning opportunities. So Grants 101, what is a grant life cycle? How do we manage it? What are grant policies? So laws and regulations for receiving federal awards. What does grant eligibility mean? And we'll go through some of that today. What are grant terms? Grants, the world of grants is a whole new world. And once you enter into it, lots of new terminology used, and we'll have to be mindful of each of the terms as we apply for grants and look through the notice of funding opportunities as well. Grant agencies, it's an overview again of the 26 federal agencies that provide grants to those non-federal entities. Grant systems, this is a touchy subject as there's quite a few grant systems out there to help us manage our grants. Once we receive it, how to report on there, how to apply. We have to register for each one. So it's a really good opportunity to look at all the different systems out there and make sure we are up to date on how to utilize them. More learning opportunities for grant programs, grant careers, how do we report, mitigating grant fraud, and also just grant events. So trainings and conferences come up to really enhance our learning opportunities in this field. So awesome feature here in Grants.gov. Definitely recommend looking deeper into it and taking or using some of these opportunities. All right, for applicants, which would be most of us on the line, we have some opportunities to, again, triple check our eligibility, get registered with any of those online portals, apply for grants. Not all grants you can apply for in Grants.gov, so we'll talk about where to get that information. Tracking our applications that we submit. Applicant training, again, opportunities for us to really enhance our knowledge in how to apply for a grant, how to write a grant, basic FAQs. And then one of my favorite features is there here at the bottom right-hand side is managing subscriptions. So we'll talk about that. We are able to type in keywords saying if any grants pop up with these keywords, please notify us. And then that way we kind of get ahead of the game in knowing when new grant opportunities are out there. Another feature of Grants.gov are forms. So this section here allows us to grab any federal form that is needed for a grant application and make sure we apply them to our total or our complete grant application process. So a feature there for us. And then connect. This is probably the most newer feature of Grants.gov. We talked a little bit of managing subscriptions. You have an opportunity, again, to get notifications of any grant opportunities that come up for topics or efforts that we are keeping an eye out for. Another opportunity to stay connected is social media. So Grants.gov has Twitter, YouTube, community blogs. That's how everyone keeps up to date. So follow, stay connected. And then another one is a mobile app. So you have App Store or Google Play. Grants.gov is now mobile, which is pretty cool, I think. And then, of course, newsletter archives. So you have an opportunity to see what's already been written. All right. So this is where we start looking for grant opportunities. This is our search tool. You'll see it's the third tab when you get into the web link. It's the third tab to the right. This is where we're able to put in keywords. So say we want to look for housing grants, say we want to look for social service grants, for health infrastructure grants, whatever those keywords are, we enter them in there. Environmental, food sovereignty, more food programs, sorry about that, what have you. You enter those keywords into there. And then if we know an opportunity number, if we did get a notice say, hey, this grant is available to us, we know the opportunity number and the CFDA number, we can enter it into here. But usually quickest way are just keywords if we're not plugged in to those subscriptions. Once we put in a keyword, we can also add some more search features. So opportunity status. Do we want to know, are these forecasted grants? Are these posted grants? You'll see here on the left-hand side. Are these, sorry, I had to switch monitors here. Forecasted grants, posted grants. Do we want to search for closed, archived? I usually just do posted or forecasted when looking at a grant opportunity. So opportunity status. You also have funding instrument types. So do we want to get into cooperative agreements? Do we want to partner with our federal agencies to accomplish a goal? Or do we just want to receive a grant and be able to monitor it on our own? So we'll click grant here as an example. And then the next one is we really want to make sure that anything that pops up in our search results, we are eligible to apply for. So again, those are on the line are either from a Native American tribal government. They really emphasize federally recognized. You have to be federally recognized in order to apply, or you can be a Native American tribal organization. So this is other than federally recognized tribes. I usually go ahead and click one or the other or both, depending on who we're looking for grants for. And then once we do, it spits out some matching results. So the example here is I typed in health infrastructure and I got 379 matching results. So it's really doing our due diligence, going through each of those results, seeing what meets our needs and going from there. One last note is in order to even reduce the possible grants, we can add a category or an agency into our search filter. So if we do want to be specific, you have opportunities to do that. Usually I just like to see what's available in all of the agencies when it comes, again, for this example was health infrastructure. What pops up for all agencies, and then being able to sort from there. So that is our search tool. I'll go back again, please. Keywords, that's our number one opportunity to find an award. Making sure that if we want a grant or a cooperative agreement, we click the appropriate box here. Eligibility, let's make sure we're eligible or we are wasting time at the end of the day for even reading a grant opportunity notice. And then again, category and agency. So quick overview there. All right, say we found a grant we wanted to apply for. We made sure that we were eligible. We go ahead and click on a link from one of the search results. So I chose this one to run with the rest of this webinar. This is from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. This is an energy improvement in rural or remote areas, and this is a fixed award grant program. Competitive, we'll go through that process, what it looks like in Grants.gov and then in the notice of funding opportunity. So we click on the grant opportunity and it gives us a synopsis. So this is our number one go-to spot to just say, hey, is this grant worth us looking into. You will notice grant document type. This is a grant notice. We have our funding opportunity number, our title of the grant, our category. Is this discretionary for this particular grant here? Our category of funding activity is energy. This is an energy grant. One thing I noticed is this was wrong on the synopsis. It says expected number of awards is 0. You'll notice when we get into the notice of funding agency or notice of funding opportunity, it's actually 10 to 100 awards that they are expected to give. So just be mindful, sometimes there's mistakes in this synopsis. It'll give us an overview of the cost sharing or matching requirements. Sub-tribes may not have the ability to cost share or match. So when we see a number there, maybe we already know we may not be able to do that. We'll triple check with our tribal leaders, but just kind of notice that section there. Also, when this funding opportunity was posted, when it was updated, things do change over time from when a grant award is posted or a grant opportunity is posted. Sometimes there's changes later on, so be mindful of that. When the original closing date was, so in this case, the original closing date was October 12th of this year, but they did update that, and now the deadline's October 26th. So just be mindful when we're looking at grant opportunities, you know, if it's a week out, 2 weeks out, it may not be worth our time. We may not be able to get a grant application together. So just be mindful of the closing date and see if we do have time to look at the grant opportunity and apply. Estimated total program funding. So for this particular grant, the agency set aside, looks like $50 million. Looks like tribes or whoever's eligible to apply can get up to $5 million depending on what their project is. And then award floor, they want at least a minimum of $500,000 for your project. So this is going to be your synopsis to any grant opportunity you click on in Grants.gov. Also in your synopsis, we'll have an eligibility section. Again, we just want to triple check, and for our purpose here, that a Native American tribal government or a Native American tribal organization can apply. You can see here, you have lots of different governments or nonprofits or higher education, public and state controlled institutions, county governments, city governments. You'll see it's a wide variety of eligible applicants. So with that, sometimes it'll tell you you have more competition, but also that you are eligible to compete for this grant. So we'll definitely make sure that we are eligible before we move forward. Also in the synopsis, again, this is within Grants.gov. It'll provide you additional information on that grant. So of course, where the grants came from, what are the goals of the grant, what's the purpose of it, do you have some assistance available to you from the funding agency or a partner to help you with this grant? What are the deadlines to be mindful of? The notice of funding opportunity link, you'll have that here in the synopsis as well. And then your grantor contact information. So a lot of information in your synopsis. We have to be super mindful. I always say read every word, do not skim. Make sure this is something we even want to pursue. That's going to be in your synopsis. All right. So we searched for an award in Grants.gov. We found a grant that we believe we're eligible for. Maybe it meets the needs of the tribe at this time. We click on the notice of funding opportunity, and out comes probably about 50 to 100 page award notice saying, hey, here's an opportunity for some grant funding, and here are all the things that you need to know to apply. and then to manage the grant. So notice of funding opportunities must be designed before announcing one. So the federal award agency must design a program before announcing a grant opportunity. You have to, or not you, but the federal award agency has to submit a NOFO for all competitive discretionary and formula grants, including cooperative agreements. So these have to be published and out there for the public to see. Usually, these are available for 60 days. That's not a lot of time once we dig into the weeds of how to even apply for a grant. It shouldn't be available less than 30 days unless there's circumstances that exist. So generally available for 60 days from the time that the federal agency announces that this is an opportunity to the closing deadline of when you need to get the application in. Again, please read every word and do not skim. Okay, there's 7 parts to a notice of funding opportunity, and we'll go through each of these. They must provide a full programmatic description. They have to give you sufficient information to help you make an informed decision. So whether or not you want to apply, more eligibility information, and I'll show you an example here. Application preparation and submission information. So what are the days and times of our deadlines? How is the funding agency going to review your proposal and evaluate your proposal? What are some additional federal award administration information that you need to be mindful of? And also applicable terms and conditions if you did end up getting the award. All right, so first things first is it has to provide a full programmatic description. So background of how this funding came about, the funding opportunity goals, anticipated award size and funding amount. We saw that on the synopsis as well. It'll be outlined in the notice of funding opportunity in detail. Example projects. So sample projects that the agency would like to see happen. If technical assistance is provided, who it's provided from, and how you can get some support. And then your project period. So this is an example here again from our energy grant that we were looking at for rural communities. As you noticed, anticipated number of awards was actually 10 to 100. On the synopsis, it said 0. So again, just making sure we're triple checking all the information that we're reading. Everything is accurate. There can be some discrepancies. Again, anticipated cost share. So this is saying you can get between 500,000 and 5 million, and there is no cost share. So the tribes do not have to put in their own money in order to get these dollars. Again, usually on the notice of funding opportunities, it provides you with example projects. So for this example of the energy grant, we can install standalone microgrids. We can install community-owned solar projects. We can do sitting or upgrade transmission and distribution lines. So it really helps us get a boost of what should we do or what could we do with these fundings. So going through each of the example projects that whatever notice of funding opportunity you're looking at, you're reading, please take a look at these sections, see if we have any inspiration, but also see if we have any opportunity to be creative and to do other projects that aren't necessarily listed in the examples section. For our energy grant, they provided some support as far as technical assistance goes. So they really highlighted who you can go to for technical assistance? When do you go to it to even see if a project is feasible or not? How do we analyze this project before we even apply for it? How do we get assistance in permitting, interconnection, or other project requirements? How do we get partners in this project, especially in a remote area? Who do we need a partner to make some of these projects happen? And do we need to secure other funding to support project construction? So this was the example from our rural energy grant. Not all notice of funding opportunities will be this detailed, but this is a great example of some support that you can get for this one particular grant. As we mentioned earlier, on a notice of funding opportunity, they have to give you enough information in order to make it for an informed decision. So of course, as a tribal government or a tribal agency, organization, we are there to meet the needs of the tribe and the tribal members, those who we serve. So we have to talk about that with our tribal leadership, our grant writers, any project supports, our planning departments. We have to make sure that it fits the needs of our tribe. When we go back and look at the estimated number of awards, is it worth it? Do we have time, our capacity? Do we have the team behind us to apply if it's so competitive? With this grant, they possibly will give up to 100 grant fundings for energy. So maybe we do have a good chance. So be mindful of that estimated number of awards to see if we do want to move forward. The other item to pay attention to is the project period. For this one particular grant that we're looking at, the project period is 5 years or as proposed. So can we make something happen in 5 years or less? And is this a project that has long-term costs? So what is it gonna need in order to continue the project moving forward? So in the notice of funding opportunity, it should be giving you all the information to make an informed decision. Here at FSA, we like to ask additional questions just to make sure everyone is on board. We can apply for this and we can successfully implement the project. So here again at FSA, we like to ask, does this project requiring hiring new positions? And if it does, we need to make sure human resources is involved from the very beginning, so they know we're going to have to figure out where to place new people. We're going to need job descriptions. We're going to need to make sure we have the ability to purchase equipment, etc. So do we have to hire new people? Does the project involve construction, remodeling, or do we need new or additional space? Maybe we do, but maybe we don't have the capacity to make that happen right now. So some other considerations there. Does the conduct of the project have any potential environmental impacts? We'll ask that question to tribal leadership and those who are planning this grant application. Do we have to have a tribal member needs assessment? And once we look at the sample notice of funding opportunity, we'll see a section that really emphasizes, is this a need in your community right now? So will we need a needs assessment to really make sure we let the funding agency know if we're not able to get these funds, here are the impacts of that? Or will this project create a new department? And if so, what does that look like? So everything listed in the notice of funding opportunity should allow us to make an informed decision. We have some additional questions here that, again, we like to ask our tribal leadership before we say, yep, let's go ahead and spend 60 hours writing a competitive grant application. Is this going to fit the tribe's overall needs? Does this go along with our current strategic plan? Do we have the administrative support to make this happen? Do we have appropriate personnel or the ability to obtain appropriate personnel? And some additional questions, again, just to make sure that we are ready to apply and hit submit. Going back to specific eligibility information, we saw in the synopsis that yes, tribal governments can apply, tribal organizations can apply. Well, in the notice of funding opportunity, there's going to be a specific eligibility section, and this is going to give you more information on who can apply. The synopsis didn't tell us that in order to apply, you can only have a population of no more than 10,000 people. It didn't tell us that in the very beginning, so we had to open up our notice of funding opportunity, look a little deeper to make sure we truly are eligible. For the rural energy grant, another requirement was that the projects, of course, had to be built within the United States. Whoever applied had to be a domestic entity, and no other federal agency other than the Department of Energy can participate. So just because in the synopsis it says we're eligible, maybe we have 20,000 people on our reservation, we wouldn't meet that definition of rural. So keep an eye out on that just to make sure we are 100% qualified to apply. Also within the notice of funding opportunity, it's going to highlight the application process and some submission information. So how do we even apply? For the example on the rural energy grant, there was a pre-application process. Not all grants will have this. I would imagine the ones that have the most significant amount of money, for example, this grant, you could get up to $5 million. They really want to make sure that tribes who apply are absolutely ready. So this example, there was a pre-application process. They had short answered questions and really honed in on the information that they wanted in order to apply. We'll go through that checklist here shortly. They also gave a maximum amount of pages. So for the pre-application, they said 10 pages. If you go more, we won't continue reading. So be super mindful of what your max amount is to justify your grant application. For this one example, only pre-applications who were successful were invited to actually complete the more detailed full application. So this was a two-step process. If the funding agency in this example really liked your pre-application, you answered all the questions, you really demonstrated the need, they were going to get back to you and say, you have been pre-qualified, you're going to be invited for a full application. It also tells you how to submit your full application. So for in this example, we had to use an online portal called OSET Exchange. And you also could have 18 pages in this example. So be super mindful of the space that you have. Or again, they may disregard the entire proposal or just stop reading at that 18 pages. All right, continuing on to proposal content. This was the pre-application required documents. This may be very similar to other notice of funding opportunities, either in the pre-application required documents or even the application as a whole. So most of the time, they even tell you how to name your file. So when you develop your proposal, they say, this is how I want it titled when you send it to us. Again, that's where it's important to read every single word, make sure we know each of the requirements in order to hit send. Of course, it's going to ask about applicant information. Who are you? What's the project of your title of your project? In this example, again, an energy rural project. Maybe we want to give it a unique title. enhancing so-and-so's tribe's energy capabilities. As an example, you'll give your grant its own project title. Also, the location and community benefits. Project overview, this is very typical to any grant application, again, whether in the pre-application section or in the full application. It's really important to list the elements using the maximum amount of words or pages or characters. They'll give you a maximum of either. So again, be mindful of that verbiage. And you're going to describe your project, identify which objectives you're going to address, making sure that you discuss the purpose and the goals, what problem you're solving, right? Grants are meant to solve problems. So what is it you are solving in your area? And you're identifying who's going to own the project. In this example, it was an energy project. Is the tribe going to own it? Are you going to coordinate with a local energy company? What would that look like? Again, what are the project benefits? Did we identify community needs? Should we have, or should we, after we fill out this pre-application? Do we have community support? Is this something the community would be super excited for, whether it's your citizens, other community agencies, or the tribe as a whole? What are the anticipated benefits, negative impacts, and what is your approach to make this happen? Lots of information here. Again, very timely. It will take coordinating with subject matter experts, with your tribal leadership, with department heads, possibly HR, IT, energy experts. We'll have to know all this information right from the very start. Very similar for other styles of grants. Say we're creating a transitional housing grant. We have to bring everybody to the table from the very beginning, make sure that we are all on the same page and can continue to meet the needs of the community. For this example, we say we submitted our pre-application, we got pre-approved, and they are allowing us to submit a full application. Then the work truly does begin. This example, we had a maximum of 18 pages. We had to, again, make sure we file or we name our file correctly. We really enhance and hone in on the project overview, on our work plan, which means our goals, objectives, who's going to accomplish it, and what's the timeline of each of those goals. Business and management, who's going to be responsible for the overall business and management of the project? What are the benefits to the community? Do we need community partnership documents? So for this example, we had to reach out to local energy providers to have a partnership. Resumes of the staff who are going to make this happen, who are going to be the key point of contacts, and do they even qualify to make something like this happen? What's their background? What's their education, their work experience? Funders want to know that before releasing funds for certain projects. Letters of commitment of support. These are letters from stakeholders or partners to support your grant application. It's really urging the funder to support your application. Sometimes letters of commitment or support are not always required or allowed. So that's where it comes in to really read every detail of your notice of funding opportunity to see what is going to consist of your full application. Going back to potential supporters, depending on what the grant is that you're looking for, you could have supporters such as state departments in health, social services, environmental agencies, transportation agencies. Do we need to reach out to other cultural organizations, professional associations, Do we need local support from colleges or education programs? So being mindful of what grant we are applying for and who we should have behind us to really, again, request the agency that this is a need and you have the support behind you. It will include a budget. For this one particular example, they wanted engineering plans, maps, and graphics. They wanted to make sure that you didn't have duplicative funding. So making sure that the project you're applying for was not funded from another source. That's very common in most competitive grants. They'll have you highlight the grants that you currently have, the goals and objectives of those grants. Again, making sure that we are not getting two of the same types of funding for the same goals and objectives. So they will triple check that. And most competitive grants require a tribal resolution signed by tribal chairman, chief, however we address your authorizing official. Big packet here. Again, lots of time, lots of energy, making sure that we qualify, that we've done our due diligence in saying, is this the right time? Do we have the backup we need from tribe, community partners? Do we have staff support? We never want to write a grant and not tell anybody about it and then have somebody else go ahead and implement it. We want to bring together everybody who will be responsible for the grant in the very beginning. And we can get those ideas of who needs to be at the table as we read through the notice of funding opportunity to see what we can do with that grant and maybe what subject matter experts we're going to need to have from, again, the very beginning. Some things to be mindful of, essential grant application formatting requirements. It's going to tell you if things need to be in PDF, if it needs to be in Word. This grant, they have to say, it has to be in English. We have to use 8.5 by 11-inch paper with margins not less than 1 inch on every side. We are in school again. We have to have a certain font. Our particular example wanted Calibri. We have to make sure it's black font, size 12 point or larger, very specific on table font, references font, making sure we add a control number at the top. So what our grant control number is, making sure we have page numbers at the footer end of every page, and the file can't be more than 50 megabytes. And of course, using all templates as required. So they get very, very specific. This was the requirement for our rural energy grant, but please be mindful, this is very common in a lot of notice of funding opportunities, depending on the grant that you are specifically looking at. And again, it does remind me I'm in school again. So going back to reading every word. Quickly, how your application will be graded. For example, how does it truly benefit the community? Do you have a solid work plan? Do you have the technical merit, the financial viability? Are we truly supporting disadvantaged communities for this one grant? Is it truly rural? Are we optimizing use of funds? Maybe we're increasing employment opportunities. They're going to look at different factors. Each notice of funding opportunity will give certain percentages for certain criteria. So you may get 50% worth of points just based on project design. You might get 50 based on the need you're addressing. So really paying attention to how your application will be graded. Some examples of some merit questions are, again, are your objectives well defined? Will the plan address the objectives? Are there any gaps in your plan? Is this truly a public purpose? Does your schedule have milestones that are included? Can you really get this done in 3, 4, 5 years, whatever your timeline is for the grant you're looking at? It also, going back to the financial viability, do you have an accounting system that can account for all grant income and expenditures by grant, so there's no commingling of funds? Does your accounting system have a well-defined chart of accounts? Does it include a robust set of accounting policies and procedures? Your funding agency wants to make sure that you can manage the dollars correctly. Does your accounting system have financial obligations and assets? Does it track all of those? So just being mindful that it's not just about the project that you want to do, the design, but also the back end of it at the financial level. Do we have the capability to manage the dollars? We're almost done here as we're running out of time and almost close to our hour. So we'll go through this. Last thing on the notice of funding opportunity is just additional information. So notifications, when should you expect to be notified of the award? Award negotiations, some notice of funding opportunities say, we'll let you know the process is 30 days, 60 days. How do we know when everyone accepts this award? If you're unsuccessful, the funder will let you know why you didn't receive award and also allow you to reach out for additional information if you like. We do recommend that just for future references. What are the reporting requirements of this grant? Terms and conditions. This is really any requirements that may be placed on the tribe to make sure that we follow all the OMB guidance, and also be acknowledge if some of the OMB guidance has been waived. It'll give you questions and agency contacts, and also funding restrictions. What are allowable costs? Do we have to follow Build America, Buy America? Can we purchase equipment? Can we do construction? Maybe we can or cannot purchase software. So just being mindful of what's listed in the funding restrictions. This is really important, and it goes back to capacity is in the reporting elements. Is it a quarter report? Is it an annual report? Do they provide templates? How do we submit? What's the key data that we're going to have to provide? Most grants, especially the competitive ones, when we do report on our progress, on our success, they want a grant summary. They want to know your milestones. They need financial statements. They need an overview of project activities, results and impacts, lessons learned, future plans and sustainability, and also any other information that you think the funders need to know as we move through. We see a lot of tribes struggle with this, where some apply for grants and maybe we lose staff, we can't fill them in time, we're not meeting the milestones and goals, maybe we have to get extensions, maybe we do have some lessons learned. So even before we apply for a grant, really making sure we have the people to make sure reports happen and we stay in the timeline that we said we were going to stay in. Last but not least, it'll tell you how to contact the funder. Some notice of funding opportunities will say, yeah, go ahead, call your project officer if you have any questions. They can help you with the application. Here's their name and contact information. Some grant opportunities say, no, you can't do that. It's not allowed. We have to go through a formal Q&A process. They'll give you the tools to make that happen. And then they'll also give you deadlines to ask questions. So we went through the process of looking for a grant, how to tell if we are eligible, how to read the notice of funding opportunity, all of the great things written in it, allowing us to see if the project, if the grant is really, and I'm going to use the time, worth our time to apply for. Most competitive grants, again, take 40 to 60 hours to truly write. Again, depending on what it's asking for. The grant that we saw today had a two-step process. So that's going to take additional time to make it happen. So do we have the capacity to do that? And how do we make an informed decision of whether or not we are going to apply? So I'll stop here and not sure if there's any questions in the chat. I don't think I see any. Perfect. Well, I believe our hour is up. Before you go, please give us some feedback. Was this webinar helpful to you? Is this something you can share with your colleagues? If you have any other webinar topic recommendations or just any other comments you have for us, this is just one piece of the puzzle in the grants world, is how to read a notice of funding opportunity. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll let you answer some of these questions and we look forward to your feedback.